Tom Nichols, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you.
Good to be with you again, Preet.
So before we get to Russia, I do want to ask you, I'm worried about the answer to this question. Have you had an Indian meal since you and I had that meal a few years ago?
I have not. And part of it is, but part of it's where I live. We don't have a lot of, I live on a beach town.
I have found Indian food in West Yellowstone, Montana.
You're just not going to buy that argument. You're not going to buy this excuse.
I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to belabor it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to belabor it. But
I did have a craving the other day for biryani. That biryani is still sticking with me.
There's some new places that I can take you to. So when you come to New York next, put aside the peanut butter and jelly and have a little biryani with Preet.
And maybe we can even find another charity to support.
Perhaps we can. So I want to date stamp this for the audience because things change on a daily, if not hourly basis. We are having this conversation on Tuesday afternoon, August 19th. I don't want to start with what just happened. Can we go a little bit back in time, maybe a week or 2 weeks? Am I correct that the war between Russia and Ukraine still rages on?
All indications are that people are still dying in droves, yes.
Yes. So Donald Trump decides to have the bilateral meeting. I don't know why we have to use such fancy words, bilateral, trilateral, multilateral. I never understood that in foreign policy. Maybe you can explain that also. So he decides to have a meeting with Putin in Alaska, which Trump seemed to forget regularly is a part of the United States. Why did he want to meet with Putin? What was the point of that meeting? And then we can judge whether or not the purpose of the meeting was fulfilled.
I think that he wanted to meet with Putin because he was trying to change a brutally ugly news cycle that he was stuck in.
Frankly. Oh, is there something going on with him?
There have been rumors.
A list of some sort?
Between the two of us, this is the driest martini ever. But I think he was, he's tired of the Epstein story. He's tired of some of the controversy swirling around the economic numbers and firing the labor statistician and the economic numbers that are not going in the direction he wanted them to go in. He just decided, you know what? Let's throw a summit. Because foreign policy, this is just a kind of basic rule of news, right? A summit is an instant news priority. And I think he just used that. It
goes right to the top. It wipes everything else off.
Absolutely.
Okay. But so that may have been his real reason, but then he had to state reasons and he had to state goals. My recollection is, although it's been some days, that he talked about how he was going to press for a ceasefire. Didn't he use fairly strong language about the ceasefire?
And a 25% chance that the meeting could fail. It was a 1 in 4. But there was
so he was right about that.
Well, the other reason I think he just kind of, did this in an impromptu way. There were no indications. Nothing had changed. No, there were no indications, no signals from Moscow, nothing. It was just, we're going to have a summit and he's going to make a deal for me. And that didn't happen.
Let's put aside Trump's interests and motivations and goals for a moment. Putin gets a call, or I don't know if they're on a walkie-talkie or they share a signal chat with Jeffrey Goldberg or whatever. Putin gets an invitation to meet in Alaska with the sitting president of the United States. Is that an easy yes for him, or are there other considerations from his perspective?
Oh, that's a slam dunk for him. He gets several things out of it. He is rehabilitated, right? This guy's an international pariah. There are a lot of countries he can't go to because he is under indictment from the International Criminal Court, to which we are not a signatory, of course. So he can actually come here. He gets Trump to roll out the red carpet, quite literally. He gets Trump to do his usual, that cringe-inducing performance that we've seen since Helsinki, where every time they get together, Trump, bows the head and pats the arm and claps and reaches, all of that kind of cringy, submissive kind of behavior that he engages in around Putin. And he gets to restate his case. He goes, I'm only doing this by, implication, or by extended extrapolation, I guess, is that I think he went behind closed doors and said, listen, I'm fed up with this. You need to get Zelensky to hand over territory. You're not going to put sanctions on me. There's not going to be a ceasefire. And thank you very much, but I'm going to skip lunch and I'm going home now. Easy call for the Russian president. Piece of cake.
So what do you imagine was happening in the Oval Office between Trump and Rubio, who has every job, it seems, and other people in his orbit about doing the meeting or not? Do you think they were telling him it was inadvisable? Do you think they thought maybe it was without an inflection point, a Hail Mary pass that was worth doing? Had they all just, and maybe you know this from reporting, maybe they all just go along with what the emperor wants to do because he can't be persuaded against anything that is in his mind?
Do you want to be the guy who goes into the Oval Office and says, bad idea, Mr. President, in this administration? There used to be people who would do that. There were people who would walk in, even if they were people.
So he says he wants to do the thing and everyone just says, okay. And so do they engage in a mitigation strategy, or they're like, F it. It is what it is. We'll let the chips fall where they may.
I mean, it seems like F it, let's just do it seems to be pretty much the guiding standing instructions for everybody around Trump. I don't know. I mean, I would hope. Remember, this is the guy where they had to put the sign in front of him that said, do not congratulate, when, Putin, won another election and Trump congratulated. I mean, I think that it's very clear that he learned the lessons from his first term. You don't have people in the office that are going to say no to you. You can see it, by the way, not just in his own staff, but look at the way other world leaders manage him. That I said the other day, I was on a talk show, and I said, he's like that little kid in the Twilight Zone episode, oh,
it's one of the most famous Twilight episodes ever.
It's a Good Life. And that with the incredibly mean, but omnipotent little kid who can just wish you into the cornfield. And so no matter what you say to Trump, it always starts with, it's good what you did. This is good. You're doing great. And you see it. You saw it with Starmer and Mertz and all the others. Oh, yes, President, a lot of faith. Good job. Even as they're literally, almost literally trying to tackle him around the legs to stop him from making one of these, harebrained deals with Putin.
Okay, so he has the meeting. And could you explain to listeners what was so bad about the meeting? People who are not versed in foreign policy. I think you called it a humiliation. Fox News, they had anchors, I think, who said it was definitely not a good meeting. There was a bad feeling in the room. And they used the verb steamrolled, meaning the object of which was Trump. What was so bad about that meeting? Yeah, they didn't make a lot of progress, but was the effort set back in some way? Why is your analysis so grim?
Well, let's go back to why they're meeting at all. The dictator of Russia took 150,000 people and launched the biggest war since Hitler in the middle of Europe. The American president, in theory here, says, I'm going to put a stop to this. I'm going to summon the Russian president to a summit. We're going to sit down. I'm going to lay out a ceasefire, and he's going to accept it. Maybe another president might have been able to pull that off. I doubt it. Putin has no reason to stop the war. But that, if that was the setup, then let's look at what actually happened. Putin shows up. The American president fawns all over him, pats his hand, talks about this morning, by the way, on Fox. He said, there's a warmth there. We have a real warmth, between us. Makes it clear that this is his pal. Takes him for a ride in the presidential Cadillac, and then goes behind closed doors and comes out and essentially parrots Russian talking points. Zelensky's the problem. He's got to be flexible. We're going to have to see what happens. Again, there's always that 2 weeks, you never know. Later interviews, I will see in a couple of weeks. That's a disaster because the Russian president shows up large and in charge, gets treated like a visiting, honorary, when in fact, if there had to be a summit, the right approach would have been for an American president to be stone-faced, distant, nod politely, perfunctory handshake, guide into none of these press praise, into a quiet room, turn the cameras off, and then bang the table and say, this war in Europe, I am not going to be the president who presides over, the second largest war since 1945. And he none of that happened. I think Putin's the guy who banged the table and said, I've had enough of your crap. And I'm going back to Russia now.
I just want to repeat a point of just complete incredulousness that I have every time we come to this topic, which is not at the center of my wheelhouse, that Donald Trump and many other people don't really think in their mind and in their heart, tell me if I'm wrong, Tom, don't really think that what Putin did, which was invade a neighboring peaceful country for no apparent good reason at all, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of his own people, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian people, that these guys don't think there was anything wrong with that. Is that a fair statement?
I think, if you're talking about these guys, meaning Republicans.
I mean, we'll start with Trump and then concentric circles beyond Trump.
Okay, starting with Trump, I think Trump has completely internalized Putin's talking points.
But he's the guy who hates. So the one thing that people say about it, Bill Maher said this last week, very earnestly, and people have their differing views about Bill Maher depending on the day of the week and what he's saying. But there is some evidence to suggest he hates war, and he doesn't like war. And he thinks war is for suckers and losers, the people who are combatants in war. And he wants to end the war, right? That's the whole premise here. Trump hates war. He wants to stop war. He likes peace. He's done it elsewhere. If that's all true, then how does he not condemn the person who started the war? I know these are very basic questions, and I don't think
I take issue with the premise of your question, counselor. I don't think that's true. I mean, this is also the guy who says to Netanyahu, go into Gaza and finish the job.
Yeah.
The guy who launches B-2 strikes against Iran. I think he has gotten into his head that he is going to be the world's great peacemaker. And part of that is to say, I hate war. Just before
so you think it's a talking point, like everything else.
Yeah. I think, look, I don't want to be too, is there such a thing as being, too fair to Trump? Nobody likes war. But you can't say on the one hand,
I don't know. Putin doesn't seem to mind it.
Well, yeah, okay. I don't think he likes it. I think he didn't expect it. I think Putin said, I didn't expect this war, but now that I'm saddled with it, I'm going to, just butcher people left and right.
Because what did he expect? Because he expected to have a 4-day romp.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you say I hate war, but go into Gaza and finish the job, and I'm going to launch a B-2 raid on Iran,
Well, that was a surgical strike, Tom.
You asked about, is there still a war in Ukraine? Apparently there's still a Iranian regime pursuing nuclear weapons. But to be fair to him, I think, sure, if he can end this conflict, he would want to, but he has completely accepted Putin's frame of reference about this. So I think that really undermines, this ability to end the war and his commitment to ending the war. Because if he were really that enraged about it, as you said, he would sit down with the person who started this war and said, use that personal warmth, right? And say, we have a personal relationship. Yeah. I'm here to help you. This war has to stop.
Yeah. So
and instead he walks out and says, well, this morning, by the way, just before you and I met today and started talking, Trump gave an interview where he said he castigated Barack Obama. He said, Crimea was handed over without a shot being fired. I'm sorry, I thought this was the peace president. Is he saying Obama should have gone to war in 2014? I was, as you know, very critical of the Obama administration's response to the aggression and the annexation of Crimea. But if you hate war, then you don't castigate your predecessor for letting a piece of territory be taken without a shot fired. I think he jumps back. I don't like that Trump always plays both sides of the street. I'm tough. I'm going to have a B-52 flyover. That was another weird thing, right? It's like, I'm here to negotiate peace, and we're going to have can I tell you something, Tom? His people loved it. I know, of course,
And I
it's all
saw
theater.
post after post of people thinking this man is incredible. What a feat of bravery and what a flex.
Yeah,
So repeatedly, what a flex to fly a U.S. military plane over the head of Vladimir Putin. By the way, also over the head of Donald Trump, as if there was some risk of harm to Vladimir. I don't even understand what the flex. What's the flex? We have a big plane.
Or that Putin was supposed to look up. That Putin was going to look up and say, I wasn't crazy about a ceasefire, but God damn, that's a big plane.
Yeah, I didn't understand the flex.
Let's sit down and talk. And of course it was a flex for, I think that's the other thing, we began this conversation with why a summit at all? And again, Trump creates his own reality. He went on Fox this morning and they congratulations, Mr. President. And you have to ask,
done.
For what? What happened?
Did they have the person on who said that Trump had been steamrolled in that meeting?
No, remarkably, they were not part of the.
It was a different people. It was the steamroll crew had the day off.
Right.
Okay, so he has the meeting. It's always fraught to try to understand what's in Trump's head. But does he have any understanding that sane and reasonable people, both here and allies abroad, erstwhile or somewhat strained allies abroad, feel that it was a humiliating performance? Does he have any sense of that?
No, he thinks that they came rushing to help because, as he put it, because we're respected again, because that's how much they respect us.
So let's talk about that. So fast forward to the last couple of days. It seems like all of Europe descended on the United States. Why? Why did so many people come along with Zelensky?
Well, I think a few reasons. And one of them, recent article at The Atlantic, which I didn't write, but I will gladly recommend to people, that said Zelensky also learned from the last time he was here.
Yeah. He put on a suit.
He put on something like a suit. He looked better.
Something closer to a suit.
And he brought people with him so that there wasn't going to be another one of these rude ambushes in the Oval Office. And because bringing a bunch of people, that's exactly the kind of thing Trump loves. Everybody sits in front of the Resolute desk and they say, "Oh, Mr. President, it's so good to see you. You're doing so. It's good what you did, Anthony. It's a good life. It's good that you didn't wish us into the cornfield." And then they say, "Okay, but now let's not do the thing that you were thinking of doing." And as I wrote, I wrote right after that meeting, look, Team Europe, kind of this team mini NATO, showed up and they achieved their minimum goal, which was to stop Trump from making some kind of, numbskull deal that would commit land swaps and security guarantees. Putin was this close to getting a lot of territory that he doesn't even sit on right now. They were going to give Putin not just a territory he'd captured, but if you saw, there was a map that Trump had in the meeting room, and it was colored, by occupation. It was practically colored as if the Russian embassy had done it and sent it over. And I think that's why the Europeans rushed over to say, "You're doing great, Mr. President. It's really good what you're doing, but don't do this."
And it was sort of like status quo, don't do any further harm.
Right. And I think that's where we are right now. The war goes on. There's no deal.
And Trump likes it. So he doesn't view it as a bunch of Europeans coming to harangue him. He views it as a bunch of Europeans coming over to sort of flock to his side and be taken a photograph with. And that's a nice pick. Fair?
And again, they're telling him, "You're doing great." So, there is this problem, as people keep pointing out, that Trump tends to reflect whoever the last person in the room was. And they wanted to be the last people in the room. Now, that lasted overnight. This morning, timestamp this as, Tuesday morning, he's back on, that the war was about NATO. The war was about, he found it very insulting that, his exact words, that Ukraine wants Crimea back. That's very insulting to the Russians. So, for now, the Europeans have held off any further, stupid thing happening. And it may be, going back to your earlier question, Preet, it may be that some of the people around Trump, Marco Rubio, who knows what happened to that guy's principles. But there was a time when Marco Rubio...
Ask J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and Vance, both of them in their earlier incarnations as more sensible men, were much more kind of Reaganite and Atlanticist and about this, about America as the leader of the free world. So maybe behind the scenes, they've been able to take this space that the Europeans created and say, well, now we're going to pursue this other thing of a Putin-Zelensky meeting. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Zelensky has any reason to step into a room alone with the guy trying to kill him without other mediators there. But I guess it's the next shiny object that Trump will chase.
Can you remind people also, now we're taking many steps back, as to why Ukraine was particularly vulnerable to being overrun by Russia in the first place, and whether or not that reason that you'll describe, I'm referring to the voluntary surrender of nuclear weapons by a state, and whether the U.S. has, if there's such a thing anymore in international relations and foreign policy, has any kind of moral or contractual or other or historical obligation for having favored the voluntary surrender of nuclear weapons, allowing them to be subject to siege and invasion by the neighboring country of Russia?
Well, I'm one of the people who, to this day, I will say it was still the right decision for Ukraine to give up its nuclear weapons.
And why is that?
Well, let me go back to your first question about why was it so easy? Because Soviet map makers designed the Soviet Union to be like an interlocking jigsaw puzzle, which is why the whole former Soviet space is full of these irredentist claims where, they basically drew areas. They would put lines through areas that were occupied by a particular ethnic group and then split it up administratively. Crimea, which was traditionally part of Russia, was actually appended to Ukraine in the 1950s. The Soviets did this all the time, basically as a warning to say, if you ever try and pull apart, it's going to be impossible because you're all threaded together by the way we drew these maps. Now, Putin knows this, and he always says, well, Ukraine's borders are illegitimate. Yes, all the borders in the former Soviet Union are problematic, to use that word, but Putin only seems to care about that particular border. When it comes to the nuclear weapons, you have to remember that the Ukrainian nuclear weapons were strategic nuclear weapons, long-range nuclear weapons, and they were pointed at us. And there wasn't
They're not
much
pointed at Moscow.
Well, they're it's a pretty short hop for an ICBM to go from Kiev to Moscow. And especially, you have to remember that the Ukraine of 1994 is not the Ukraine of today. It was a much more unstable place, much more riven with corruption. I believe that if they had kept their nuclear weapons, the Russians, probably with American, if not assent, with us politely looking away, may well have said, well, we can't live next to an unstable nuclear power. We have to invade and destroy these nuclear weapon sites and put in a government closer to our... I really think holding the nuclear weapons probably would have provoked a Russo-Ukraine war 25 years ago.
So you don't agree with the people who say the opposite, who say, we are to blame in part for the vulnerability of Ukraine. That's not a viable and fair argument.
I think we're to blame, and I was pretty hard on the Obama administration about this. I think we're to blame for saying things like we're pivoting to Asia. Remember the Obama administration, we're going to pivot to Asia. Pivoting to something means you're pivoting away from
something else. Yeah, pivoting. I think we should say pivot less, unless it's the great podcast.
And we need to pivot to a new subject
by my friends. Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. But other than that, I think I'm going to get in trouble with you.
But I think pivot, we signaled that we just weren't interested in Europe anymore. And that once, the nuclear problem had been solved, we assumed that the new Russia would be better even than the one we signed the Budapest Memorandum with. That the Budapest Memorandum said Russia, the UK, the United States, and Ukraine, we all agree not to mess with each other's borders, not to engage in aggression, and that if anything happens, the signatories will go to the UN Security Council. That's all it says. I mean, people really think the Budapest Memorandum is like a NATO Article 5 guarantee, and it's not. It was done sort of to say, yes, we still care. A bunch of borders will be there, but we also thought we were dealing with Yeltsin's Russia and not this fascist, this neo-fascist thing that Putin has turned Russia into 30 years later.
You have now, on a few occasions, been quote unquote fair to Trump. You replied to somebody's tweet, I don't know who it was, referring to what happened this past number of days as follows. That was the most pathetic, least presidential showing by an American politician in history. It goes on, and you write, this is unfair. Trump's had far worse showings, Helsinki the worst, and then his disgusting ambush of Zelensky. When you rank these things, Thomas, what criteria do you apply?
Damage done to American standing, damage done to American national security, damage done to our alliances and our ability to work with allies and partners to shape the world in a way that I think most Americans don't understand is actually conducive and supportive of their well-being, and basically undermining the stability, global stability. Because every time one of these things happens, Putin says, I have more room to operate. I have more room to do terrible things. And Helsinki in particular I put Helsinki at the top because Helsinki was a double whammy. It was a double curse. Not only did Trump encourage Putin and, again, show this kind of very submissive, very beta-like kind of, affection for Putin, but he did it while crapping on the American intelligence community at the same time, basically saying, I believe Putin and our own guys are a bunch of liars. And that it's one thing to shake our position in the world. It's another thing to shake our position in the world and tell your own people back home that your own government can't be trusted as much as the Kremlin can be trusted. So that's the worst.
There's a parallel to that on this trip, which is Trump has been using Putin's words behind closed doors, as validation for his theory that mail-in balloting can't be fair in a democracy. So he consulted and relies upon and touts a well-known election integrity expert, Vladimir Putin, for that same principle. And I'm tired of asking the same question, and I'm just maybe stupid or naive. Trump is not an imbecile. I keep trying to understand his mind. What goes on in his head to think that is a good argument, that promoting the idea of a person who is a dictator of a country, who has not presided over or been the beneficiary of an election with integrity in a very long time, to promote, like, why do you get that guy to blurb your campaign book or your campaign ideas? Because I go back to people will disagree with me on this. Trump is not an imbecile. And it's one thing to have a certain view of Putin, but to put out into the public square, I have idea X. And one reason why idea X is the right idea is because this guy who's antithetical to everything that relates to idea X agrees with me. How is that? How in his head is he thinking that's persuasive? And I'll stop asking questions in this vein soon.
He may not be an imbecile, but first of all, he is not the brightest guy, especially when it comes to complex. I mean, he has a kind of lizard brain brilliance about marketing.
Yeah, but he's
putting
persuasive.
His name on
okay. So that if you concede that, Tom, he does know how to be persuasive to at least large legions of people. That's how he got elected twice. Failed once.
But he's also aggressively narcissistic, Preet. And that, part of that is the inability to see anything beyond yourself or how it relates to anything that isn't you. And people who have met him have told me, I've obviously never met the president. People who met him said that, yes, he can be very charming, but he is also very much about winning the moment. So I kind of stole this metaphor years ago from somebody else. He's a goldfish. I mean, he darts from thing to thing.
Right.
He has no memory of the past, no expectation of the future. Get through the moment, win the moment, and then deal with the fallout later, which is why I think we're always trying to untangle things that he said. Well, yesterday he said this, but today he said that. And tomorrow he's going to say something else, because it's all about getting through the moment, dominating the media, dominating the conversation at that moment, and then moving on. And Putin is the guy, Trump, you've seen this. I mean, how much you've been a victim of it. I mean, you know how much grievance this guy carries. He's this huge boulder of insecurity that weighs him down. And Putin is the guy behind closed doors who says, Donald, I am a powerful man too. You're doing great. I understand you. I get you. And you are right about everything. That, for a guy like Trump, that's gold, man. That's catnip to somebody like Trump.
So is there a political lesson in this? Do intellectuals on both the left and the right, and strategists and others, have it wrong when they say and think and advocate that truly intelligent people think about their strategy over the long term, and you have a day-to-day strategy as well, or tactic, depending on the word you want to use? And the success of Trump, and he's the nominee 3 elections in a row, won twice, and you arguably could give him even extra points because he had so much baggage and indictments and unwavering unpopularity among certain segments. So he won 2 out of 3 times with a lot of handicaps. One could argue that's a pretty remarkable political feat. And if he accomplished it by never thinking beyond the current political moment, is that what smart politicians should emulate to get elected?
Well, if all you want to do is, I mean, I've said many times, the reason he ran this time was to stay out of jail. Mission accomplished.
Well, it worked.
It worked. Yeah. It also says, have some reasonably smart people around you who can thread the needle of the Electoral College, and make sure that your opponent is I mean, he won against Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. So, I feel like Trump is, we keep talking about Trump's amazing ability to win, but I would say against very damaged, very second-tier candidates.
But I would retort that before he got to Hillary, he vanquished easily 15 Republican politicians, or 16 Republican politicians, some of whom were thought to be formidable. It wasn't a free, like, that primary was not a freak show. That primary was not full of Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams.
But they made when I used to teach strategy at the Naval War College, we would tell our students about the bonus of having what we would call a cooperative adversary, right? This is somebody who walks into your traps, somebody who disbelieves their own intelligence. When you're going to war, you want a cooperative adversary who's kind of dumb. And the mistake during the primary was that all of those guys said, I think they all made the same calculation, and they all made the same mistake. They said, Donald Trump can't possibly win the nomination in any real world. American voters are not that stupid. The Republican Party isn't that stupid. It's not going to happen. But I'm not going to attack Donald Trump, because when he goes down, I want his voters. I will pick up his voters. And so all these guys engaged in fratricide, attacking each other, not realizing until it was too late that Trump had been building up this, this bank of primary votes. And instead of getting together, I mean, there were moments that I couldn't understand during the primaries where, somebody should have stopped and said, wait a minute, if this guy is going to be on this stage and talk this way, I'm not going to participate in this, this is shameful. The Republican Party ought to be ashamed of itself. And I want to be the leader of the Republican Party. And I'm not going to stand here and listen to this guy talk this way. And instead you had guys like Ted Cruz going, Donald, use your words, Donald, use your, and it was like, sorry, that just made them all look weak. So I would argue that Donald Trump has never really had to deal with an opponent a political opponent at the top of their game. Because who was the obvious front runner, by the way, in 2016? Jeb? That wasn't going to happen either.
I don't think you can say Jeb without making clear the exclamation mark. Jeb.
Jeb. So I think
people are driving in their cars and I've just hurt their ears. I'm sorry. to have Jeb.
But I just don't
To
think,
have done that.
I think I think 2016 was the result of a perfect storm of,
Yeah, but then you had a perfect storm again in 2024.
yeah, when Joe
Perfect storms
Biden
happen.
stepped down and Kamala Harris.
Well, that's a lot of perfect storms.
Well, it's two lucky hits. Twice.
I mean,
it's all
no, but a perfect storm by definition means like a bunch of lucky stuff happens simultaneously.
Yeah, and
So
I would
it's
I would
not two
argue
things. It's like 1,000 things and then 1,000 things again.
I think both of those describe 2016 and 2024. I really do.
So on foreign policy, I'm going to ask you this question kind of as a riddle. Isn't it all explainable, as some people think, by a thing that Donald Trump does not have? He has a lot of stuff. He's the most powerful person on earth. He's the commander-in-chief of the United States of America, president. He's the most probably recognizable and talked about person on planet Earth. All of these things are, I think, clear goals of his. He has billions of dollars, even if he didn't have it before the presidency, as a lot of reporting has suggested. He and his family have made a lot of money, corruptly or otherwise. What does he not have, Tom? What is, I'll give you a hint. It's two words. The second word is prize.
Oh, Nobel Prize, of course.
Nobel
yes.
Prize.
Yeah. And Barack Obama has one, and a world in which the black guy has a Nobel Prize and Donald Trump doesn't.
Race. Now you're bringing race into this, Tom. It's not.
I'm sorry.
I didn't think that was your way. I didn't think that was your way. But can a lot of this be explained? Because this guy who has like kind of everything, arguably, he needs that Nobel Prize, and that's why he's operating the way he's operating, whether it's foolish or not.
Well, I think especially because, going back to the black president, but I think it's because not just the black president, but the one who humiliated him in public. You know, that how can this guy...
Hasn't he had his vengeance? Hasn't he had his vengeance?
There's no bottom for his appetite for revenge, Preet. He doesn't...
Yeah.
You know, there's no moment where he says, all right, I punished my enemies enough. I feel sated and I feel like I'm finally... I mean, you know, a bottomless thirst for revenge comes from a bottomless well of insecurity and neediness. To this day, he still, has this sense. People are laughing at him. People are criticizing him. People are saying bad things about him. He did it. He did it in Alaska. He did it again a few days afterwards, griping to anybody that would listen. He did it in front of 7 European leaders about, the worst press and everybody thinks. And I mean, it just is to be an adult and to watch a grown man do this every chance he gets is so cringe inducing, but that's where it comes from. And it's not going to stop. He's never going to say, I've finally gotten there. I have made my point. I've been elected twice. I've, shown what I am. It's never going to stop.
I want to ask you a specific question about troops in LA and what's been going on in DC and the federalization of the police there. But first, as somebody who is a teacher and student of military history and the like, can you explain why the distinction between civilian and military rule in this country is important?
It's a bedrock tradition of American government, going back to George Washington.
And more than tradition, right? Some of it is enacted into law, posse comitatus, and other things. But how much of it is tradition that can be undone by the whim of a president who likes showing force?
Lots of it. The reason it's a tradition, the reason we didn't enact a lot of it into law is because we didn't have to. I mean, you're a lawyer, you know this. If you have to keep writing laws about things, something's going wrong, right? It's like saying we need a law that says you have to love your kids, right? You don't have to tell people they do that under penalty of, the state. And the reason we didn't is because, again, going back to our founding, George Washington, who said, when we took up the soldier, we did not lay aside the citizen, and that our identity as citizens in a democracy is the most important thing. Trump is fascinated by the military and by symbols of power. I mean, you see him; he salutes. He reminds me of that expression, how to stay out of trouble in the army. If it moves, salute it. If it doesn't, paint it. Trump is fascinated by these things. And I think it's because, again, he is a weak and insecure man who feels attracted to these symbols of power. But in the American our American cultural tradition is that the military is not separate from us. You get military rule in countries where the military, and particularly the officer corps, feels separate from the rest of society, right? Where they've been raised on, in academies and military reservations. And then when they think the country is dysfunctional, they kind of show up and take power. Our military, they're us. The U.S. military, they're our brothers and sisters, our husbands, wives, sons, daughters. They are not separate from us. We live together, and they defend us from threats, everywhere, but particularly foreign threats, and rarely against internal threats, which is why we have police and state police and the FBI and so on. And I think, that militarizing these problems is, first of all, I think Trump is just fascinated by doing it. But also it's a tool he can use. He can command the army. And it's a way of showing that it's like the B-52 flyover. Look at how powerful I am. I put troops into the dark and dangerous streets of Georgetown.
Or Jeb wouldn't have done that. It felt right to say. I'm just going to exclaim his name, 3 letters.
I want to see peace and order reign on Wisconsin and M Street. Well,
and part of the problem is, I think years ago I think it was James DeVritis on, and maybe not every, but a disproportionate, and you know this better than anybody, and you're an erudite person yourself. Generals of extreme success and achievement are deeply educated people, generally. And I think it was DeVritis talked about how the best generals and the most accomplished generals and high military officers in this country believe in the civilian tradition, abhor war, but also like to learn and educate themselves and read a lot. And the funny thing is, and that's not how generals are typically presented in movies and in fiction. And that's the way in which it seems that Donald Trump gets his central casting ideas about people who have certain roles in society. And he thinks they're just like, B-2 flying, flexing,
cowboys,
bomb dropping cowboys.
Yeah.
And in the first term, it seems to me like he was disappointed by the generals he appointed to various positions to advise him and in the cabinet, because they weren't cowboys, because they were deeply reflective people who believed in knowledge and wisdom as opposed to whatever Trump believes in. Is that all fair?
Well, and you see it not only from Trump, but from Pete Hegseth. I still can't believe. I still have a hard time putting words.
He's so people will not like that. Some people will not like that, Tom, because it's not like he's out from outside the service. He did serve.
Yes, well, when he said we need a Secretary of Defense back who's had boots on the ground, and he was talking about Lloyd Austin, who has had boots on a lot more ground than Pete Hegseth is ever going to see. It was really a way of saying is we want generals who are, as you say, like Hollywood central casting, like Jack Nicholson. It's like, you want me on that wall, you need me on that wall, and real generals and admirals, of whom I have known and many and educated a few, are not like that. And I'm sure it's endlessly disappointing to Donald Trump to have, these. In fact, the other thing I would point out is that most of the generals and admirals I've ever known, a few exceptions here and there, very soft-spoken. They are not men and women who feel the need to yell. And speaking of women, by the way, that's the other thing, is Trump wants to get rid of all of the female top officers because they can't be, women don't want to have blood in their teeth and, guts all over their uniform. And it's cartoonish is what it is, Preet. It's again, and I keep coming back to this word, it's juvenile.
He has these visions of what a wealthy person is supposed to live like, or what a military officer is supposed to advocate.
We're going to be scraping gold off the Oval Office for years after he's gone. Well,
at least we still have the Rose Garden. Oh, sorry.
Oops. The Rose Garden, which now looks like the, like an au bon pain.
Now the au bon pain. Now I guess we're not going to be able to use them as a sponsor of the podcast.
There's nothing wrong with au bon pain. I just don't want the White House. I don't want the White House to look like one. That's all.
Jeb. I don't know why.
I brought up Jeb and it's stuck in your head now. The exclamation points are haunting you now.
It's become a verbal tick in this interview that allows me a moment to think and reflect on my next question to you. I want to talk about domestic politics, and we spent some time in this conversation and in other conversations talking about Trump's style and the complete and total acceptance of his belligerence, his stream of consciousness way of communicating, his social media posts that are famously hard to understand, don't make a lot of sense, in their belligerence and in their odd hours of posting. They're all often in all caps. They're misspelled. There's weird punctuation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which his people seem to love. There's a Democrat in the land named Gavin Newsom, who people have various opinions on, strong or otherwise, who has recently been posting in the style of Donald Trump, with all caps, very narcissistic, obviously as a parody. And the response has been super interesting. Democrats and anti-Trump folks, myself included, I thought at the beginning it was kind of silly. Now I think it borders on sort of brilliant, epic satire, because there are lots of examples of MAGA people who are complaining about the childishness and juvenile nature of the Gavin Newsom tweets, not understanding that it's a parody of their guy. What do you make of all of that? I'm really curious to know how you think about that.
Well, I have two thoughts. One is, I, like you, I have constantly been astonished that America, I shouldn't say America, that Trump's supporters and a large number of otherwise sort of unengaged American citizens have just accepted that Trump is kind of our emotionally disordered national child, and that things that they would never accept from a real president, from an actual leader, they just shrug
from
and
me.
say, yeah, but
they wouldn't accept
Trump.
it from you as a professor.
Oh, I mean,
right? They wouldn't accept it. They wouldn't accept it from a podcaster or a practicing lawyer. Am I right?
But some time ago, I was talking with Charlie Sykes, and the two of us said, he now has the only job for which he can pass the qualifications, which is president, because all he has to do is convince enough people, and he gets the job. And nobody would be able to do these kinds. And I think his supporters love it. They say, well, he's transparent. He gets away with things because he says stuff. Yes, but it's unhinged, and the guy does have control of nuclear weapons, and he is the commander in chief. And if any other president did this, he would either be impeached or removed by the 25th Amendment for being unstable. And we've just kind of all accepted, we've all agreed that Trump, is just that this is just how he is. And I think that's a tragedy.
Yeah. And when you say all of us, it's not just his supporters. Like everyone else is like, yeah, I'm not going to focus on the tweet because he just set back American foreign policy by having that encounter with Vladimir Putin that we've been discussing. So who's going to get hung up on a tweet?
There's a problem in the media with that, of course, which is to say, I can't write the story that says the president of the United States just blathered for 2 hours about sharks and electrocution. I have to write something that sounds coherent. So we kind of go through like a buffet, and we pick out the last.
There's a rehabilitation of his. Yeah.
It's not just MAGA folks or the kind of MAGA rank and file. It was fascinating to see Dana Perino on Fox getting in all this high dudgeon and saying this is unserious and beneath just fuming about how this was juvenile and unserious. And you watch that and you say, you're so close to getting it. You're so close to self-awareness on this issue, but you're not there yet. And I think it proves to me, at least, I think the reaction to the Newsom stuff, which I'm not a big Gavin Newsom fan. I don't think he'd win.
Well, are you a little bit more today than last week?
No, I think
because
it's
of the social media. Is he useful? Is he helpful to be able to have a guy like that?
I think in one way, which is showing the anger you're seeing from MAGA world, proves something I think that I've been saying for a long time. Deep in their hearts, they know. They know Trump is disordered. They know this is juvenile. They know it's unseemly. They know yes, some of them paint, Trump's body on Rambo on their vans. Okay, there's always, he has a weird cult of personality. But I think a lot of other people look at what Trump does It's some years ago, I was talking to a guy who said he really has trouble talking to his dad now because his father was just captured. And he says, Dad, look at what he just said. It doesn't make any sense. It's gibberish. And the old man said, and I think this sums up a lot of what Newsom is bringing out of people. He said, well, I understand. I know what he meant. I know what he meant. And what Newsom is saying by doing these parodies is, you don't know what he means. You really don't. You just like it. You like that he's cruel. You like it that he makes people uncomfortable. You like that he hates the people you hate. But come on, you don't really understand anything he said. You just like the way it was done. And that's by doing these parodies in that style, he's showing, I think, and holding up a mirror to a lot of these folks saying, you wouldn't accept this from anybody else. And you're being a hypocrite, basically.
Look, I was skeptical, and there are many issues with many politicians, including Gavin Newsom. But I will admit and confess guiltily, perhaps, that I am enjoying the MAGA reaction. So you look at one of his tweets that is fully in the style of Donald Trump, and you see the MAGA reaction, and you see the MAGA reaction, and it's crazy. They're losing their freaking minds.
Yeah. Because they know.
No, but not all of them are not getting the joke.
Oh, they get the
cognitive dissonance must be
unbearable.
Must be jarring. I mean,
it's
some people checking into a hospital.
To be a Trump supporter is to live with that level of cognitive dissonance every day, I think, except, again, for the most cultish, for the people that just really think of him as, sent by Jesus to straighten out America.
I think it also, and again, it's a weekend, it may grow old, and I don't know how long he's going to keep it up. But the point is not for every other, like Josh Shapiro shouldn't start tweeting in that style too. But it is providing a little bit of a lesson of liberals not falling into the trap of being owned, whatever that means, right? So, for example, there was one exchange I saw where someone suggested that something that Gavin Newsom said or his office said was disrespectful to the governor of Texas, who was in a wheelchair. And someone said, well, you used the phrase, I may be getting this kind of wrong, but people will understand the point. He rolled over, which, some MAGA supporter or some Abbott supporter suggested that was, cruel or not proper or whatever. And the Newsom, this is not a way that a liberal ever responds. The Newsom people responded, maybe it's inappropriate to laugh. You sound woke. He'll get over it, or something like that.
It's been an ongoing feature of MAGA world that the F your feelings crowd is the biggest bunch of snowflakes that ever existed. I mean, they are impossibly delicate souls. Let's face it. They are find it difficult to take any criticism. They really believe that other people should listen to them, screeching. And I mean, it's always amazing too, when I go into a supermarket or a superstore, a BJ's or a Costco or something, there's always one guy's got he's wearing the hat and talking really loudly about, like almost like saying, come on, debate me, fight me. And yet very, very sensitive about criticism. I remember at one point I wrote something critical of Donald Trump's manliness. And a guy sent me a message saying, well, what military did you serve in? What tough guy? And I'm like, wait a minute, what military did Donald Trump serve in? It's just this remarkable and hypocrisy. And I think what Newsom did, I will go with you this far, Preet, that what Newsom did was, again, hold up a mirror and say, this really does look stupid. It really is juvenile and irresponsible and unserious. And you see it now. And you always knew it was there, but you never had to deal with it. I will also admit the one thing that Newsom did that made me laugh was his parodies of that painter, the guy who does the freaky, culty Trump paintings where, all the presidents are gathered around Trump. And he had one where he had Kid Rock and somebody else, and an angelic passed away Hulk Hogan in the style of this painting, with their hands on Trump. And I thought, man, that is so on the nose. But again, you wonder, the people that will get it will be furious, and the people who don't will feel like it was needlessly cruel. But I guess I'm going to say, and I'm just going to put in a word here. I wrote a piece a long time ago saying fight like adults. And I don't think liberals should just stand around to be owned and have to, not respond. But I really hope this doesn't become like a feature of our politics on all around now, because I do think Newsom's made his point. The question is, how long should this go on now?
Yeah, I think of it as a point well made, like very artfully and beautifully made. And maybe it's lost on the MAGA people, so there's maybe not that much value, and maybe it just makes Trump critics feel good about themselves. I'm not sure it is.
I mean, I keep parting company with you on this, Preet. I think
that's okay.
I think they look at it and they know somewhere. Remember the old slam on Goldwater, right? In your guts, he's nuts. That was they tried to push that one.
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, no, it was a saying in the 60s.
I know Tippecanoe and Tyler too, and also, you know what else I know? Jeb.
This was better than Jeb. This was in your guts. He's nuts. Jeb. And I think that to be an avid Trump supporter is to live with a lot of cognitive dissonance every day. And I think Newsom poked that sore spot of saying, deep down, you know how crazy this sounds. You know how nutty it is to have all caps, triple Jeb, triple exclamation points, in these things. That these paintings are weird. I mean, you people know this, but no one ever confronts them with that by saying straight up, because the answer they get, going back to my friend's father, is, well, I understood him. I know what he meant.
And look, and they're not even criticizing it as being bad satire. It's like pretty good. Tom, I've kept you too long. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time, your insight. And I think we owe, if not the world, ourselves a big biryani dinner next time.
Absolutely. I'm coming to New York, and you got to show me the next place where I'm going to enjoy.
I got a couple in mind. Maybe a double header. Thanks, Tom.
You bet. Nice to see you again.
Hey folks, hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of Stay Tuned.